Episode 2, When the House Held Its Breath. The nursery door stood ajar, revealing a ghostly, empty cradle that had waited 50 years for a child who would never come. 50 years later, in the winter of 1861, I returned to Auburn for the first time since leaving for New York. I planned to attend a convention at Corning Hall. I stayed at the American Hotel on Genesee Street, just a short walk from our old home. I would stop by before departing for New York City.
Attention Auburn! Grand New York City production, right on Genesee Street. The famed tale of Rip Van Winkle. 3 glorious nights only. Casey Opera House. Admittance is but a nickel. Don't miss this waggish wonder.
On that last day, my return train to New York didn't leave until 3 p.m, so I walked to the house right after breakfast. Walking along Genesee Street that brisk morning was now a delight, with its blue slate sidewalks replacing the wooden ones. As I got closer, my mind quickly filled with memories of our old home. I noticed that the same Seneca Turnpike, which once carried covered wagon caravans, was now busy with pre-Civil War traffic, though that seemed of little importance at the moment. When I arrived, I was immediately overwhelmed and a little misty-eyed as I climbed the stairs to our beloved front porch. The new owners were a charming young couple who greeted me at the door. After a brief introduction, they kindly gave me a tour of their home. When we reached the second floor, I paused at the nursery door. Although that room was now her sewing room, to me, it remains the same. The cradle forever empty, the tiny unworn garments neatly folded, and all earthly hopes dashed by the cold February wind of 1811. Standing in her sewing room in 1861, 50 years dissolved. Suddenly, I was 18 months old again, though I would know this story only through whispered fragments.
Auburn, you want the real taste? The secret to the freshest Fairhaven oysters is Mott at 14 North Street. He's got your clams, canned goods, and the best shuck in the county. SS Mott guarantees it.
1811 brought a wave of 3 deaths to our family, beginning with my brother, Alva. A healthy teenager, he became ravaged by typhoid fever, transforming him into a burning, delirious shadow of his former self. Mother was 9 months pregnant at the time and refused to leave Alva's bedside. Her swollen belly made even sitting in the chair beside him difficult. She cooled his brow, spooned him broth, and comforted him through feverish nights. This vigil was especially exhausting because of her advanced pregnancy and the years of childbearing that had already pushed her body to its limits. One day, his fever broke, and the family believed God had answered our prayers. Mother, relieved, finally rested. She slept, convinced the worst was over. But typhoid fever is a treacherous disease. They learned too late that even seeming recovery can be temporary. While she slept, Alva took a chill and caught a common cold, an illness that would have been minor for a healthy person. Yet, he was still vulnerable and recovering from typhoid, and the cold proved fatal. He died that same day, within 2 hours. When she woke the next day, she naturally believed she had saved Alva. No one in my grieving family could immediately dispel this illusion, fearing her delicate prenatal condition. When Aunt Stella found the courage to let her know that Alva had died while she slept, Mother collapsed with grief. She gave birth that night. By morning, Mother and baby both died during childbirth. In the days that followed, our home was eerily silent. Rooms that once echoed with laughter and the clamour of a large family now only held whispers and the rustle of black crepe. The wake was held in our home. 3 coffins lay in state in our front parlour, a sight so overwhelming that even some of Auburn's bravest residents wept openly at the threshold. The house held its breath, every room waiting for footsteps that would never come. For a period after the funerals, our neighbours spoke in whispers when they passed our house. Father's hammer fell silent in his forge. His chair by the fireplace now faced a different direction, as if he couldn't bear to look at the spot where Mother had spun wool. The front staircase, which had once echoed with her footsteps checking on sleeping children, now creaked with the movements of women learning to navigate a household that had lost its centre. Even the sunlight filtering through the sheer curtains she had hung seemed different. The windows that once framed Mother's silhouette as she worked on her tasks now only showed empty spaces. The golden morning sun, which used to catch her hair as she prepared breakfast, now illuminated nothing but dust motes dancing in the air where she should have been. Grandmother's first words were practical. Where did she keep the flour? You children need feeding. She summoned her strength, took on the responsibility of our household, and helped raise her orphaned grandchildren. My father's sister, Aunt Stella, left her comfortable life and moved in with us permanently. She brought helpful hands and a gentle spirit that seemed to understand what each of us needed. For the older children, she offered practical advice and emotional support. For me, she became the soothing voice singing lullabies and taught me how to walk. The most significant change was made by my 11-year-old sister, Hannah. Overnight, she transformed from a child into a little mother, taking on responsibilities that should have been years away. She helped cook meals, comforted crying siblings, and maintained a brave face despite her broken heart. I have heard that Hannah sometimes would be found in Mother's room, sitting on the bed and talking to the empty air as if seeking solace. What would Mother do? Became her constant refrain, and somehow, through determination, she usually found the correct answer. These women, grandmother, aunt, and sister, formed a triangle of care that offered us support. They divided the tasks that had once belonged to Mother, yet somehow never made us feel like a committee was raising us. Each brought her own gifts: grandmother's stern wisdom, Aunt Stella's nurturing patience, and Hannah's understanding of what it meant to be motherless. Auburn's kindness responded to our tragedy. In a time when pioneer families were expected to handle their own issues, our neighbours saw our loss as grief that called for a community response. Mrs. Brown attended my mother's funeral. Years later, when I was finally healthy enough for school, she would kneel beside my desk. Her weathered hand covered mine as she whispered, "Poor motherless child." The words didn't sting, they warmed. The Bostwick family welcomed us. Mrs. Bostwick, a gracious woman of modest means, created a home filled with family warmth. Her daughters, Jane and Betsy Maria, quickly became my close friends, while their servants, Sybil and 11, also showed kindness by including me in their caring circle. Dr. and Mrs. Hakaliah Burt, pillars of St. Peter's Church, were exceptionally kind. They knew grief needed quick sympathy and ongoing support. Their consistent presence in our lives was comforting and helped us through the long healing process. Auburn's support sustained us through those first dark months, but the question of our family's future remained. My father, Abel Terry, decided at 37 never to remarry. Though still young, skilled, respected, and financially stable, a man who could have easily found another wife in Auburn society, he chose a different path. Many widowers in his situation remarried quickly, often out of practical reasons, especially if they had young children. Years later, when the widowed Mrs. Patterson began bringing us Sunday dinners, I watched Father retreat to his forge. One love was enough, he told me simply. His choice shaped the family. We were spared the complications of a stepmother, never questioning our father's love. We grew up knowing our parents' love story was sacred, and no one could diminish our mother's place in our father's heart. However, his decision also meant the burden of raising us fell entirely on our grandmother, aunt, and young sister. They bore responsibilities and made sacrifices that a new wife would have shared.
From Auburn's best craftsmen, unbeatable value and unmatched quality. Ready-made clothing since 1838. Visit the Old Prison Clothing Store, Genesee Street.
Standing now in that transformed nursery in 1861, I could still sense their shadows. I was glad the new owners had filled our old home with love and life, yet the house still bore traces of that tragic winter of 1811. I heard it in every creak of the floorboards. In my memory, the nursery, parlour and kitchen, despite the new owners, still carried remnants of what we lost. The empty cradle, the 3 coffins, and the void left by Mother's absence. The house felt familiar, yet completely disconnected from me. Even the squeak of the stair treads sounded different as we descended to the parlour. My gracious hosts extended their hospitality and invited me for morning tea, and I thanked them for their graciousness before departing. I returned to the hotel and later took a carriage to the train depot on State Street for my 3 p.m. train. I boarded the crowded Iron Horse, and after settling into my compartment, I began to reflect on the trip. I felt a mix of emotions, both a longing for the old house and a sense of pride in Auburn's development into a refined, cultured city. However, the fervent discussions at Corning Hall were unsettling, prompting me to seriously reconsider the descriptor cultured. Arriving late that night at the Manhattan Depot, I walked home, my mind still engrossed in these thoughts.
Presenting the American Hotel, Auburn's landmark hotel since 1838. We offer fine accommodations and dining. Genesee Street, opposite the courthouse. Proprietor H.L. Swift.
A few weeks have passed, and now I smile, having made peace with those issues and viewing the trip positively. I am also happy to say there are no signs of dark events involving the previous owners of my Manhattan home. Still, 50 years later, that nursery door continues to symbolise our tragedy, while the room still feels touched by the child it was supposed to contain.
You'll find Auburn's best tailors at the Old Prison Clothing Store on Genesee Street. Our garments are of the best quality at an unmatched price. The finest in ready-made clothing since 1838. Visit us at the Old Prison Clothing Store today.
The wonder of autumn in central New York. At the Auburn Museum, other wonders await. And now new wonders for the fall. Rediscover the Auburn Museum, 105 Genesee Street, open late.